She gave him everything, her time, her dreams, her life, every sleepless night, every sacrifice, all for her little brother. She believed in him. She trusted him more than anyone in this world. But what if the person you raised, the person you poured your entire life into, suddenly becomes the reason your world shatters? Pause. Camera shift to close-up of a woman holding a suitcase, tears in her eyes. Angela thought she had finally built a life worth living. She believed her sacrifices would pay off. She believed her brother, Marcus, would never betray her. But she was about to learn the hardest truth of all, that love and loyalty don't always guarantee gratitude. Quick cuts of moving boxes, empty house, a cold glare from a brother and his wife. The house she called home was no longer hers. The brother she loved turned away, and the woman who seemed so sweet held a secret that would change everything. In the blink of an eye, everything Angela had worked for was ripped away. Music builds intensity. Camera pans to Angela walking alone on a dark street. What would you do if the person you sacrificed everything for stabbed you in the back? If the family you trusted betrayed you for someone else? Could you survive the heartbreak? Could you find strength when your world collapses around you? Pause. Soft, sad piano music begins. Tonight, on Midnight Stories, we bring you the shocking tale of Angela, a woman whose love was priceless, whose sacrifices were endless, and whose life was turned upside down by the one person she trusted the most. Stay with us, because by the end of this story, you'll feel every tear, every heartbreak, and every moment of betrayal as if it were your own. Music fades slightly, suspenseful pause. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about love, pain, and the courage to rise when everything falls apart. So watch closely, because Angela's journey will grip your heart, haunt your thoughts, and leave you questioning, who can you truly trust? Screen fades to black briefly, then text appears. The truth sometimes hurts the most when it comes from family. Welcome to Midnight Stories, your home for the darkest, most shocking tales that unfold when no one is watching. From secrets and betrayals to mysteries that will leave you speechless. Stay tuned, because here, every story has a twist, and every truth hides in the shadows. After everything I did for you, this is how you repay me? Angela's voice trembled as the words left her lips, barely holding together the storm raging inside her. She stood frozen at the doorway of the living room, her fingers still wrapped around the strap of her worn handbag. It slipped slowly from her grasp and hit the floor with a dull thud, but no one moved. The silence in the room was heavy, uncomfortable, guilty. In front of her stood Marcus, the boy she had raised, protected, and loved more than her own life. But the man standing there now, he felt like a stranger. Beside him stood Vanessa, his wife, arms crossed tightly, her expression cold and unreadable. Angela's chest tightened as she looked between them, searching for something, regret, shame, anything. But all she found was distance. What is this?" she asked, her voice softer now, fragile. "Why are my things packed?" Her eyes drifted to the corner of the room, where boxes were stacked neatly. Her clothes, her memories, her life, all reduced to cardboard. Marcus shifted uncomfortably, rubbing the back of his neck. He couldn't meet her eyes. It's just temporary," he muttered. But even he didn't sound convinced. "Temporary?" Angela repeated, her voice rising slightly. "Marcus, talk to me. What's going on?" Vanessa let out a small, impatient sigh and stepped forward before Marcus could answer. "We've already discussed this," she said sharply. "It's time for you to move out." Angela blinked, as if she hadn't heard correctly. "Move out," she whispered. "This is my home." Vanessa's lips pressed into a thin line. "It's not anymore." Those 4 words hit harder than anything else. Angela felt her knees weaken, but she forced herself to stay standing. Her heart pounded so loudly she could hear in her ears. She turned to Marcus, desperate now. "Marcus, tell her," she pleaded. "Tell her this is a misunderstanding." For a moment, just a brief moment, something flickered in his eyes. Doubt, guilt, but it disappeared just as quickly. He finally looked at her, but his expression was distant, detached. "It's not a misunderstanding," he said quietly. Angela's breath caught. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Marcus swallowed hard, then spoke the words that would shatter her world. The house is in my name now. Angela stared at him, trying to process what he had just said. What? She shook her head slowly. No, that's not right. You said it was just paperwork. You said... I know what I said, Marcus interrupted, his tone firmer now. But things have changed. Changed? Angela's voice broke. What changed, Marcus? I trusted you. Her eyes filled with tears, but she refused to let them fall. I signed those papers because you asked me to, she continued. Because I believed you. Because you're my brother. The word brother lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. Marcus looked away again. Vanessa stepped closer, her heels clicking against the floor. Look, let's not make this emotional, she said coldly. We're trying to move forward with our lives. We need space. We need independence. Angela let out a soft, disbelieving laugh. Independence, she repeated. From me? Vanessa didn't answer. Angela turned back to Marcus, her voice trembling with a mix of pain and disbelief. Is that how you see me now? She asked. As someone holding you back? Marcus hesitated, and that hesitation was all the answer she needed. Tears finally spilled down Angela's cheeks. All these years, she whispered. Everything I sacrificed for you. It doesn't matter anymore, does it? Marcus clenched his jaw, clearly uncomfortable, but he said nothing. Angela took a slow step forward, her heart breaking with every second. Do you remember, she said softly, the nights I stayed awake just to make sure you finish your homework? No response. Do you remember when I worked 3 jobs so you could go to college? Still nothing. I gave you my life, Marcus, she said, her voice cracking completely now. I gave you everything I had. The room was silent again, but this time the silence felt final. Vanessa glanced at the clock, clearly impatient. We don't have time for this, she said. She needs to leave. Angela turned her head slowly toward her, disbelief written all over her face. She? Angela repeated. Not even my name? Vanessa didn't flinch. Angela looked back at Marcus one last time, hoping, praying, that he would say something, that he would stop this, that he would choose her. But he didn't. Instead, he spoke the words that would haunt her forever. You should go, Angela. That was it. No apology. No explanation. Just leave. Angela felt something inside her break completely. Not just her heart, her trust, her love, her belief in him. All gone in an instant. She nodded slowly, as if accepting something she never thought she'd have to face. Okay, she whispered. She bent down, picked up her bag, and wiped her tears with the back of her hand. For a moment, she stood there, looking around the room that once felt like home. Every corner held a memory. Every wall had witnessed her sacrifices. And now it all meant nothing. As she walked toward the door, she paused. Without turning around, she spoke one last time. I hope it was worth it. Her voice was calm now. Not angry. Not loud. Just empty. Then she opened the door and stepped out. And just like that, the woman who gave everything walked away with nothing. Long before the betrayal, before the cold silence and broken trust, there was love. A deep, unconditional love that lived in Angela's heart. The kind that asked for nothing in return. It all began on the worst day of her life. Angela was only 19 when everything changed. One moment, she was just a young girl trying to figure out her future. And the next, she was standing in a hospital hallway, holding her little brother's hand as a doctor delivered the news she would never forget. Their parents were gone. Just like that. No warning. No time to prepare. Marcus was only 8 years old. He didn't fully understand what had happened, but he understood one thing. He was scared. And Angela saw it in his eyes. That night, as Marcus cried himself to sleep, clinging tightly to her arm, Angela made a silent promise. I won't let anything happen to you, she whispered, and I'll never leave you. From that moment on, she stopped being just a sister. She became everything. A mother, a father, a protector, a provider. Life didn't give her time to grieve. Bills didn't stop. Rent didn't wait. So Angela stepped up. She dropped out of college just weeks after the funeral. Her dreams, her future, quietly put aside without hesitation, because Marcus needed her. She took the first job she could find, a small, run-down diner on the edge of town. The hours were long, the pay was low, and the customers were often rude. But Angela never complained. Not once. Every morning, she woke up before sunrise, prepared Marcus for school, made him breakfast, even when there was barely enough food, and walked him to the bus stop with a smile on her face. "Have a great day," she would say, brushing his hair back gently. Then she'd head straight to work, sometimes without eating anything herself. There were days she worked double shifts, her feet aching, her back sore, her body exhausted beyond words. And when that wasn't enough, she cleaned houses on weekends, scrubbing floors, washing dishes, doing laundry for strangers just to make a little extra money. Every dollar she earned had a purpose. Marcus, his school supplies, his clothes, his future. Angela made sure he never felt the weight of their struggles. Even when the electricity was cut off, she turned it into a fun night with candles. Even when there was only enough food for one, she told Marcus she had already eaten at work. He believed her, because, to him, Angela was strong, unbreakable. But the truth? She was barely holding on. There were nights she cried quietly in the bathroom so Marcus wouldn't hear. Moments when she looked in the mirror and didn't recognize a tired, worn-out face staring back at her. But every time she felt like giving up, she reminded herself why she started. Marcus, he was her reason, her purpose, her everything. As Marcus grew older, he began to notice the sacrifices. He saw the way Angela's hands became rough from constant work. He noticed how she wore the same old clothes year after year, while he always had something new for school. One evening, when he was around 13, he found her asleep at the kitchen table, bills spread out in front of her. Her head rested on her arms, exhaustion written all over her face. Marcus stood there for a long moment, just watching her, and for the first time, he truly understood. The next morning, he hugged her tighter than usual. "I'm going to make you proud one day," he said. Angela smiled, her heart swelling with hope. "I already am," she replied softly. From that day on, Marcus worked hard in school. He studied late into the night, determined to honor everything Angela had done for him. And Angela, she pushed even harder. When Marcus talked about college, she didn't hesitate. "You're going," she told him firmly. "But it's expensive," he argued. "We can't afford it." Angela shook her head. "I'll figure it out." And she did. She picked up extra shifts, took on more cleaning jobs, sacrificed even more of herself, if that was even possible. There were weeks she barely slept, days she went without proper meals. But when Marcus received his college acceptance letter, every sacrifice felt worth it. She cried tears of joy as she hugged him tightly. "You did it," she whispered. "No," Marcus said, pulling back slightly. "We did it." Those words stayed with her. They meant everything. When Marcus left for college, the house felt empty, too quiet. But Angela didn't mind, because she knew this was the beginning of something better, a future she had fought for, a future where Marcus would succeed, and finally, she could rest. Over the years, Marcus called her often, updating her on his grades, his life, his dreams. And every time, he reminded her, "One day, I'll take care of you. You won't have to struggle anymore." Angela held on to those words like a lifeline. They gave her strength, hope, a reason to keep going. She believed in him completely, never once doubting that all her sacrifices would lead to something good, something meaningful. Because in her heart, Marcus wasn't just her brother. He was her legacy, and she trusted him with everything she had. She just never imagined that the same boy she gave her life for would one day be the reason it all fell apart. For years, Angela lived with one quiet belief in her heart. One day it will all be worth it. Every long shift, every sleepless night, every sacrifice she made. She carried it all with the hope that Marcus's future would shine brighter than her present ever could. And slowly, that hope began to turn into reality. Marcus didn't just survive college. He thrived. He called Angela the day he got his first big internship. his voice filled with excitement. "Angela, you won't believe this. I got it." Angela had been in the middle of her shift at the diner, balancing plates in her hands. But the moment she heard his voice, nothing else mattered. "I knew you would," she said, her face lighting up with pride. "I told you, didn't I?" That call meant more to her than any paycheck she had ever earned, because in that moment, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Relief. All those years of struggle were finally leading somewhere. As time passed, Marcus climbed higher. Internship turned into a full-time job, and that job turned into something even bigger. A corporate position in a respected company. A stable income. A new life. Angela still remembered the day he called to tell her he got his first apartment in the city. "It's not huge," Marcus said modestly, "but it's mine." Angela smiled warmly, even though he couldn't see her. "That's all that matters," she replied. "You built it yourself." But deep down, she knew she had helped build it too. Not for recognition, not for praise, just out of love. Marcus insisted she visit him. The first time Angela stepped into his apartment, she was in awe. Clean furniture, bright lights, a kitchen filled with food, real food, not just the basics she was used to. It felt like a completely different world. "You like it?" Marcus asked, watching her reaction closely. Angela nodded, her eyes shining. "I love it," she said softly. "You've done so well." For a moment, Marcus looked emotional. "I couldn't have done any of this without you," he admitted. Angela's heart swelled. Those were the words she had been waiting to hear. Not because she needed credit, but because it meant he remembered. He understood, and for a while, everything felt perfect. Marcus began sending her money occasionally, insisting she work less. "Angela, you've done enough," he told her. "Let me help now." At first, she resisted. "I'm fine," she would say. "I don't need anything." But Marcus didn't listen. He paid off some of her bills, bought her new clothes, and even surprised her one day by fixing up parts of the old house. For the first time in years, Angela allowed herself to breathe, to slow down, to believe that maybe, just maybe, her life was finally changing too. Then came Vanessa. Marcus introduced her during one of Angela's visits. "She's special," he said with a smile. Vanessa was everything Angela wasn't. Elegant, confident, well-spoken. She carried herself with a quiet sophistication that made a strong first impression. "Angela, I've heard so much about you," Vanessa said warmly, extending her hand. Angela smiled politely. "All good things, I hope," she replied. Vanessa laughed lightly. "Only the best." At first, Angela liked her. Vanessa seemed kind, respectful. She complimented Angela's strength, her sacrifices, even calling her incredible at one point. And when Marcus told Angela he wanted to marry her, Angela didn't hesitate. "If she makes you happy," she said, "then I'm happy." The wedding was beautiful. Angela sat in the front row, her eyes filled with tears. But this time, they weren't from pain. They were from pride. As she watched Marcus standing at the altar, dressed sharply, smiling with confidence, she remembered the little boy who once clung to her in fear, the boy she raised, the boy she protected. And now, he was a man, a successful one. "You did it," she whispered to herself. But deep down, she also felt something else. A quiet thought she had never allowed herself to fully explore before. Maybe now it's my turn. After the wedding, Marcus approached her and pulled her into a tight hug. "You're not just my sister," he said softly. "You're my hero." Angela closed her eyes, holding on to that moment. Those words meant everything, because for years, she had poured her entire life into making sure he succeeded. And now, hearing him acknowledge it, it felt like closure, like peace. Soon after, Marcus and Vanessa suggested something that seemed like a natural next step. "Why don't you come live with us?" Marcus offered. Angela hesitated. "I don't want to be a burden," she said honestly. "You're not a burden," Marcus insisted. "You're a family." Vanessa nodded in agreement, though her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "It'll be good for all of us," she added. Angela thought about it for days. The idea of not being alone anymore, of finally living with a person she had sacrificed everything for. It felt right. So she agreed. Moving into their home felt like stepping into a new chapter. A better one. Marcus handled most of the finances, often telling Angela not to worry about anything. Just relax, he said. You've earned it. And for the first time in years, Angela listened. She trusted him completely. When he asked her to sign some documents regarding the house, she didn't question it. It's just for legal purposes, he explained casually. Makes things easier. Angela didn't even read them carefully. Why would she? This was Marcus, her brother, the one she raised, the one who promised to take care of her. So she signed, without hesitation, without doubt, because in her heart there was no room for suspicion, only trust, only love, and the belief that after everything she had been through, she had finally reached her happy ending. She just didn't know that this happy ending was quietly turning into the beginning of her greatest heartbreak. At first, it didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like small changes, the kind you barely notice at the beginning, the kind you excuse, overlook, and convince yourself are normal. Angela had finally started to relax in Marcus's home. For the first time in years, she wasn't constantly worrying about bills, long shifts, or survival. She woke up without rushing. She ate without counting every bite. She even allowed herself quiet moments, sitting by the window with a cup of tea, watching the world go by. It felt unfamiliar, but peaceful. Marcus was often busy with work, but that was expected. He had responsibilities now, meetings, deadlines, business trips. Angela understood that. She had spent her entire life understanding him. Vanessa, however, was different. At first, she was polite, respectful, even warm at times. But slowly, that warmth began to fade. It started with little things, subtle changes in tone, shorter conversations, forced smiles that disappeared the moment Angela looked away. One morning, Angela was in the kitchen preparing breakfast, something she loved doing, something that made her feel useful again. Vanessa walked in, glanced at the table, and frowned slightly. You don't have to do that, she said flatly. Angela paused, confused. I just thought, we usually eat something lighter, Vanessa interrupted. This is a bit much. Angela looked down at the food, eggs, toast, and tea. Simple, but suddenly it felt wrong. Oh, I'm sorry, she said quickly. I didn't know. Vanessa didn't respond. She just grabbed a cup of coffee and walked out. Angela stood there for a moment, staring at the breakfast she had made, the one no one would eat. It was a small moment, but it left a strange feeling behind. Still, Angela brushed it off. She's just adjusting, she told herself. It's her house too. Days turned into weeks, and those small moments started adding up. Vanessa began making more comments, always polite on the surface, but carrying something sharper underneath. You should really rest more, she'd say. You've done enough already. At first, it sounded kind, but over time it felt different, like she was being pushed away, gently but deliberately. Angela noticed that Vanessa rarely included her in conversations anymore. Dinner discussions became quieter when she entered the room. Plans were made without her. Laughter faded when she got close. It was subtle, but it was there. Marcus, on the other hand, seemed distant. He still cared, still asked if she was okay, but something had changed. He wasn't the same Marcus who used to sit with her for hours, talking, laughing, sharing everything. Now, he was always in a hurry, always distracted, always somewhere else. One evening, Angela sat in the living room waiting for him. She had made his favorite meal, something she hadn't cooked in years. She wanted to surprise him, remind him of home. When Marcus finally walked in, he looked exhausted. "Oh, you're up?" he said, glancing at the table. "I made dinner," Angela said softly, smiling. "Your favorite." Marcus hesitated for a moment. I already ate," he replied. The smile on Angela's face faded slightly. "Oh, okay," she said quietly. Vanessa walked in behind him. "We had dinner with some colleagues," she added. "It was last minute." Angela nodded. "No problem," she said. But as she stood there, looking at the untouched food, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Unwanted, Still, she said nothing, because that's what she had always done. She sacrificed. She adjusted. She stayed silent. But then came the moment that changed everything. One night, Angela woke up feeling thirsty. The house was quiet as she walked toward the kitchen, her footsteps soft against the floor. As she passed by the hallway, she noticed a faint light coming from the living room. Voices, low, whispering. She wasn't trying to listen, but something in Vanessa's tone made her stop. "We can't keep doing this," Vanessa was saying. Angela froze. Marcus responded, his voice tense. "Lower your voice." "I'm serious," Vanessa continued. "She's always here. It's like we don't even have our own space." Angela's heart began to race. "She's my sister," Marcus said, though his voice lacked conviction. "And—" Vanessa snapped. "That doesn't mean she has to stay forever." There was a pause. A long, heavy pause. Angela held her breath. Then Vanessa said the words that made her stomach drop. "She's just holding us back." Angela felt like the ground beneath her shifted. "Holding them back?" "She gave you everything, Marcus," Vanessa continued. Her tone softened now, but no less sharp. "But that doesn't mean you owe her your entire life." Angela's eyes filled with tears. She wasn't supposed to hear this. She wasn't supposed to know. Marcus didn't respond immediately, and that silence, it hurt more than anything Vanessa had said. Finally he spoke. "I know," he said quietly. Two simple words, but they shattered everything. Angela stepped back slowly, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure they could hear it. She couldn't listen anymore. She didn't want to hear anything else. She quietly returned to her room, closed the door, and leaned against it as tears streamed down her face. Her mind was racing. Holding them back? After everything? For the first time, doubt crept in, not just about Vanessa, but about Marcus. Had he really changed that much? Or had she just been too blind to see it? She sat on the edge of her bed, staring into nothing. Memories flooded her mind. All the sacrifices, all the love, all the years she had given without question. And now, she felt like a stranger in the very home she once believed was hers. That night, Angela didn't sleep, because deep down, she knew something wasn't right. And whatever it was only the beginning. The morning felt wrong. Angela couldn't explain it, but something in the air was heavy. The kind of silence that doesn't comfort you. It warns you. She had barely slept the night before. Vanessa's words kept replaying in her mind like a broken record. "She's just holding us back." Angela tried to shake it off as she got ready for work. She stood in front of the mirror, looking at her reflection. Tired eyes, worn expression of a woman who had given everything and somehow ended up feeling like nothing. "Don't overthink it," she whispered to herself. But her heart didn't listen. She left for work like any other day, forcing a smile, pretending everything was fine. But something inside her told her it wasn't. Just a few hours into her shift, Angela started feeling uneasy. She couldn't focus. Her hands moved, but her mind was somewhere else. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore. She asked her manager if she could leave early. "Are you okay?" he asked, concerned. Angela nodded quickly. "Yeah, just not feeling well." That wasn't entirely a lie, because something inside her was unwell. Deeply, as she walked back home, her steps felt heavier than usual. The closer she got, the tighter her chest became, and when she reached the front door, she paused. Her hand hovered over the handle. For a moment, she didn't want to open it, as if some part of her already knew, once she stepped inside, nothing would ever be the same. But she took a deep breath and opened the door. The first thing she noticed was the silence, not the peaceful kind. The cold kind, the kind that makes your skin crawl. Then her eyes moved and her heart stopped. Boxes, everywhere, neatly packed, organized, labeled. Her things, her clothes, her memories, everything she owned, reduced to boxes stacked against the wall. Angela felt her breath hitch. "No," she whispered under her breath. Her legs moved on their own as she stepped further inside, her eyes scanning the room in disbelief. What is this?" she said, her voice shaking. And then she saw them. Marcus and Vanessa were sitting in the living room, waiting, like they had been expecting her. Angela's heart began pounding so loudly it felt like it might burst out of her chest. She looked from the boxes to them and back again. "Marcus," she called softly, her voice filled with confusion and fear. "What's going on?" Marcus stood up slowly, his face tense. Vanessa remained seated, her posture calm, almost prepared. Angela's stomach twisted. "Why are my things packed?" she asked again, louder this time. Marcus opened his mouth, but no words came out. Vanessa sighed and stood up. "We think it's time you move out," she said, her tone flat, emotionless. Angela blinked. Once, twice, as if trying to wake herself from a nightmare. "Move out?" she repeated, barely able to speak. Her eyes slowly turned to Marcus. "Marcus?" she whispered. He couldn't look at her. "I think it's for the best," he said quietly. That was it. No explanation. No discussion. Just a decision. Angela felt like the floor beneath her had disappeared. "For the best?" she repeated, her voice trembling. "For who?" Silence. Her chest tightened. "This is my home," she said, her voice rising slightly. "I lived here before you." "The house is in my name now," Marcus interrupted. The words hit her like a slap. Angela froze. "What did you just say?" Marcus finally looked at her, but there was no warmth in his eyes. "It's legally mine," he said. Angela shook her head slowly, disbelief written all over her face. No, that's not true. You said those papers were just for taxes, for convenience." "It doesn't matter what I said." Marcus cut in. Angela staggered back slightly, as if the weight of his words had physically pushed her. "It does matter," she said, her voice breaking. "Because I trusted you." Tears filled her eyes as she stepped closer. "I didn't even read them properly because I trusted you, Marcus," she cried. "You're my brother." The word echoed in the room, but it meant nothing now. Marcus's jaw tightened. "It's done," he said firmly. "There's nothing to argue about." Angela stared at him. This wasn't the boy she raised. This wasn't the Marcus who once promised to take care of her. This was someone else. Someone cold. Someone distant. Someone she didn't recognize. "I gave you everything," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Everything." Her voice cracked completely. "I worked myself to the bone for you. I sacrificed my life for you. I raised you." She paused, her breath shaking. "And this is what I get?" Marcus said nothing, not a single word. And that silence, it destroyed her. Vanessa crossed her arms. "We're not saying you didn't help," she said calmly. "But that doesn't mean you get to stay here forever." Angela turned to her slowly, disbelief and pain in her eyes. "Help?" she repeated. "You call it help?" Her voice trembled with emotion. "I gave up my life," she cried. "I gave up my dreams so he could have a future." Vanessa didn't react, didn't flinch, didn't care. "That was your choice," she said simply. Those 4 words, cut deeper than anything else. Angela felt like her heart had been ripped out of her chest. Her choice? Was loving her brother a mistake? Was sacrificing everything meaningless? She looked at Marcus one last time, begging, hoping. "Please," she whispered, "tell me this isn't who you are." Marcus closed his eyes for a brief moment. Then he said the words that shattered her completely. "You should go, Angela." And just like that, everything ended, not with a fight, not with anger, but with indifference. Angela stood there for a moment, frozen in time. Then slowly she nodded, a small, broken nod. "Okay," she whispered. She bent down, picked up her bag, her hands shaking uncontrollably. Tears blurred her vision as she walked toward the door. Every step felt heavier than the last. This house, this life, this family, it was all gone. As she reached the door, she paused, not because she wanted to stay, but because she needed to say one last thing. Without turning around, she spoke. "I hope it was worth it." Her voice was quiet, empty, and final. Then she opened the door and walked out, leaving behind everything she had ever known, with nothing but pain. That night, Angela had nowhere to go. The sky was dark, the air cold, and the city felt unfamiliar, even though she had lived there for years. because this time she wasn't walking home. She was walking away from it. Her suitcase felt heavier than it should have, not because of what was inside, but because of everything she had just lost. Her home, her family, her purpose. Angela walked slowly down the street, her mind completely blank. The pain was too much to process all at once. She didn't cry. Not anymore. It was as if her tears had run out. She stopped under a streetlight and looked around. Cars passed by. People moved on with their lives. The world hadn't stopped. But hers had. Where do I even go? She whispered to herself. For a moment, she felt completely lost. But then, a small thought crossed her mind. There was a cheap motel a few blocks away, a place she had passed by countless times but never imagined she'd need. Tonight, she did. The room was small, dim, barely enough to feel like shelter. But it was something. Angela placed her suitcase on the floor and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. Silence surrounded her. No voices, no memories, no expectations, just emptiness. And then the tears came, all at once. She broke down, covering her face with her hands as years of pain, exhaustion, and heartbreak poured out of her. I did everything right, she cried softly. I gave him everything. Her voice echoed in the empty room, but there was no answer, because sometimes there isn't one. That night, Angela cried herself to sleep, not just because she lost her home, but because she lost the person she loved the most. The days that followed were the hardest of her life. She moved from the motel into a small, run-down apartment, the only place she could afford. The walls were thin. The furniture was old. The space was tight. But it was hers, and that mattered. Angela went back to work almost immediately. She couldn't afford not to, but something had changed. She wasn't the same woman who used to work tirelessly for someone else's future. Now, she was working just to survive. And for the first time in years, she was alone. Completely. At first, the loneliness was unbearable. There was no one to talk to, no one to come home to, no one to care. The silence followed her everywhere. Sometimes, she would sit in her apartment after a long day, staring at the walls, wondering how her life had turned out this way. Was it all for nothing? She would ask herself. Did any of it matter? The questions had no easy answers. But slowly, something began to shift. Not all at once, not in a dramatic way, just little by little. Angela started noticing things she hadn't paid attention to in years. The quiet mornings, the freedom to make her own choices, the absence of pressure. For so long, her entire life had revolved around Marcus, his needs, his future, his happiness. She had forgotten what it meant to live for herself. But now, she had no choice. And that realization, as painful as it was, began to change her. One evening, after a long day at work, Angela sat by her small window, holding a cup of tea, the same simple moment she used to have in Marcus's house. But this time, it felt different. She wasn't waiting for anyone. She wasn't trying to please anyone. She was just existing for herself. And for the first time in a long time, it felt peaceful. Not perfect, not happy, but peaceful. I've spent my whole life taking care of someone else, she said quietly to herself. Maybe it's time I take care of me. That was the moment everything truly began to change. Angela started small. She took better care of herself, ate properly, rested when she needed to. She even found a slightly better job, one that paid more and treated her with more respect. It wasn't easy. Nothing about her life had ever been easy, but this time, she wasn't doing it for someone else. She was doing it for herself, and that made all the difference. Weeks turned into months, and slowly, Angela began to rebuild her life. Not the life she once imagined, but a new one, a stronger one, a life built on self-respect instead of sacrifice. Then one day, her phone buzzed. Angela looked at the screen. Her heart skipped a beat. Marcus. For a moment, she just stared at the name. All the memories came rushing back. The love, the pain, the betrayal. Her fingers hesitated. But eventually, she opened the message. I'm sorry. It read, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have done that to you. Angela read it once. Then again, her expression didn't change. No tears, no anger, just calm. For months, she had imagined this moment, thought about what she would say, how she would respond. But now that it was here, it felt different, because she was different. She placed her phone down on the table and didn't reply, not out of revenge, not out of hatred, but out of understanding. Some wounds are too deep for apologies. Some betrayals change everything. Angela stood up and walked toward the window, looking out at the world beyond, the same world that once felt so cold and empty, but now it felt full of possibility. She took a deep breath, and for the first time, she smiled, not because everything was perfect, but because she had survived, because she had rebuilt herself, because she had finally learned something that took her a lifetime to understand. She didn't need anyone else to complete her. She was already enough. And this time, she wasn't living for anyone else. She was living for herself. And that was her true beginning.